Whether you're hitting the road or kicking back in the cab, it's time to take a load off with Big Rig Banter. Powered by AllTruckJobs.com, your source for finding the trucking jobs drivers really want. Get ready to shift into gear and let the conversations roll.
Hello and welcome to the 16th episode of Big Rig Banter, a show about all things commercial driving and transportation related. I'm your co-host Connor Smith.
And I'm your co-host Troy Diffenderfer.
And today's date is June 6th, 2018, and this episode is all about women in trucking. We've got some great interviews coming for you guys today. We have Ellen Voie of Women in Trucking, along with Angelique Jones, part of Women in Trucking's street team and a hazmat driver. And we'll also have an interview with Ali McTrucks, who covers the trucking industry and will share her perspective on women in trucking as well. We'll also have an industry spotlight today with Beth Jacobs from Truckers Against Trafficking to recap on her story in a previous episode, which you can check out. There'll be a link in the show notes. And she'll elaborate on her experience with human trafficking and this segment of the industry.
Yeah, that's right, Connor. But before we jump into the statistics, I think it's important to remind our listeners that we want them to subscribe to YouTube and iTunes, as well as leave reviews if they feel it necessary. That's something we really appreciate. We want the feedback, and we hope to climb up the ranks. And actually, later in the show, we're going to give you some other trucking podcasts to listen to. It's certainly a community when it comes to the trucking podcast, so we want to give them their due as well and kind of spread the love. But as I was saying, even as the overall number of active truckers in the U.S. swelled 1.8% year over year to 3.5 million in 2015, the amount of female drivers shrank 10% to actually 177,000 drivers, according to a recent report from the American Trucking Associations. The most recent count has women constituting only 5.1% of truck drivers, the smallest percentage since 2011. However, the average wage of a trucking job is around $42,000 per year, meaning it's definitely a lucrative gig, and it's something that should attract females as far as the salary. We've written a blog that you can actually check out that covers the driver shortage, and I mentioned how an influx of female drivers could actually help fix this driver shortage that we talk about all the time. So why aren't we seeing more women in the trucking industry? Well, we sat down with Ellen Voie, president of the Women in Trucking organization, as well as Angelique, a driver of 20 years and a member of the WIT image team, to shed some light on the issue. So let's take a listen to that interview.
All right, so we're here with Ellen Voie, president and CEO of Women in Trucking, and Angelique Jones, a commercial driver. Ladies, thanks so much for coming on the show and talking to us today.
Very welcome. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I just want to start off, and Ellen, if you could talk a little bit about Women in Trucking's mission and your organization in general.
Sure. Women in Trucking is a nonprofit association, and we have about 4,000 members, mostly in North America, but some around the world. And 19% of our members are men, because it's really not for women as much as it is about women. But our mission is threefold. It's to introduce women to careers in transportation, and then to look at what are some of the obstacles that might keep women from entering the industry or succeeding. And then the third part is to celebrate successes and honor the pioneers. So basically, we represent, I like to say, the women who design the trucks, build the trucks, sell the trucks, fix the trucks, drive the trucks, own the trucks. We represent all women in the trucking industry, not just drivers and not just management, but everyone. Perfect.
And so, kind of to break into the conversation here, and I guess this question could be for Angelique more so at first, what do you think some of the common misconceptions about women in trucking are, and could you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, well, personally, I feel like the biggest misconception of women in trucking is that we can't do the job as well. We can't do the job as well, or we can't do the driving as well. We can't do as well as the men do. And then about the women in trucking industry, the most basic misconception that I feel when I'm talking to people about it is that they feel like it's all going to be men bashing, and we don't, because we're all family, the men and the women, and we're not like the family that only calls you for Christmas. We're the family that you can text every day and call every day and Facebook us all day, and we will stop our day and say, hey, what's wrong? What do you need? Is there anything I can do? You know, what do you need? Some advice, or you need some information? You know, where can I help you at?
And what about...
And this is Ellen. Angelique is correct. As far as the association, I'm very proud of the fact that almost 20% of our members are men, because it's men who believe in our mission and believe that we need more women employed in the trucking industry. So women make up about 7% of the driving population and under 20% of women of the management. And in the 15 publicly traded trucking companies, half of them have no women in leadership roles and half of them have no women on their boards. So we think we have a long way to go to get some more diversity in trucking.
Absolutely. And so kind of thinking about trying to attract more women and more diverse truckers to the industry, Angelique, what made you want to get into trucking in the first place?
Well, I wanted to be a truck driver since I was 12. And driving to work with my dad a lot, I saw all these gasoline tankers, and I just knew. I said, that is what I want to do. And my dad said, no way, no how, any daughter of mine is going to be driving that truck ever, ever, ever. So yeah, it's just my love. It's part of my heart. It's my personality. It's not a job. It's not a job. It's definitely not.
And Ellen, what started the Women in Trucking organization? How did that kind of come to fruition?
Well, I was working for a large carrier in the Midwest, and they my title was manager of recruiting and retention programs. So they said, figure out how to attract and retain non-traditional groups, such as returning military, Hispanics, seniors, and women. And at the time, I was getting my pilot's license, and I belonged to Women in Aviation. And it struck me that there wasn't a Women in Trucking association. So I put together a board of directors. I got our attorney. He's been with us since the very beginning, and he helped get all the legal work in order. And the first year, we hit 500 members. So I think we realized that we struck a nerve in the trucking industry, and that people really do want to see more women at all levels.
Perfect. And so, you know, what are some tactics or kind of strategies for bringing more women to the industry? And this is for either of you, really.
Okay, well, I'll let Miss Ellen go first.
Well, and I want Angelique to talk about the image team as well, but there's lots of things that we've done. First of all, we need to get outside of the trucking industry to let people know about jobs here. So we do a lot of ride-alongs. We just did a ride-along with Congressman Gallagher from Wisconsin, United States Congressman Gallagher, this weekend. And we've done ride-alongs with a lot of elected officials and regulators because we want them to get the media to show that there's great jobs in the industry and that women can earn as much as men as far as driving population. But another thing we've done is we found out the Boy Scouts had a transportation patch. So we worked with the Greater Chicago, Northern Indiana Girl Scout region and developed a curriculum and created a Girl Scout patch. And over 1,000 girls have already earned that patch in North America. And in a very short time, in a few weeks, we've got a Women in Trucking doll. Her name is Claire, and Claire will be available at Amazon or TA Petro or Hava USA. But we want to do a series of dolls. So the first one will be a truck driver. I'd like to have a technician, maybe a safety director. I'd like to have a series of women in the trucking industry so that young children can play with a doll and say, you know what, maybe I can do this someday. But really, it's getting the message out. So we try to get our drivers out at trade shows. Angelique's helped at events. We try to get our drivers in the news as much as possible. We've had drivers in Oprah magazine and a driver on the Ricky Lake show and one on Dr. Oz. So we need to get out to the non-trucking public to let them know that there's great jobs. But the image team is a great way of doing that. And so Angelique can talk a little bit about that.
Yes, that is true. The image team, we basically are like the stepmoms because, of course, Ellen is the mother, not the older mother, but Ellen is the mother, and we're like the stepmothers, you know. So basically, we all have communication with each other, whether it be through telephone or through Facebook. You know, one of the image team members could call me and say, hey, I've got a young lady that's closer to you than she is to me, and I really need to talk to her, mentor her, help her out, and that's fine. We all get together, and we all use our personalities outside of the image team when we're in our trucks and on the road. Even though I'm local, I'm very long local, but we use our personalities to talk to women about the industry and talk to them about the Women in Trucking organization. And me being a mother of 6 children, I use my kids. So they're like my walking advertisement, because every time someone says, hey, what does your mom do? They're like, oh, let me show you. I can pull her up on Google. So they pull me up, and then they tell them all about what we do. And basically my job does the same thing as Ellen does for us. They have me in several newspapers and on their Instagram and Facebook page, and we get a lot of recognition for that, and they use me. I'm also a certified hazmat trainer, so we do kind of pull people in that way and kind of just talk to them and do whatever it takes. Even with the Facebook page, you have some women on the Facebook page that don't know us personally, all of us that are on the image team, and we will step in and comment, and it'll be a more, all the comments are positive, but it's a more personal comment when one of the image team members comments on someone's situation or someone's question on Facebook, because we want them to know that we take everything that they put on there seriously.
Well, and the fact that they're drivers, you can relate to drivers. They have a lot more respect for the image team drivers because they know that they understand their, what they go through on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, we do.
And speaking of that, are there any distinct challenges for women in trucking? I know in the news we've seen in other industries the pay gap when it comes to gender. Is that an issue, or are there any other distinct challenges specifically for women within the industry?
Well, I'll let Angelique talk about pay because
I don't think that, well, I can talk about pay, but I will say that it was a challenge. I've been at my current company for 16 years, and for 15 years, it has been a big challenge. The pay was very different, and I have to add that I am the only woman on the hazmat side of the entire company. So that's number one. But this year that just passed, I was named the top earner of the entire company. So 15 years, and just this my 16th year, yes. It was very difficult to deal with different situations and just trying to get out there and do what I do. And it finally paid off. I'm not upset about it at all, but there's still some women that are trying to reach where I am. And that's why I'm here doing what I do.
But Angelique, there's no difference between what men make and what women make, correct?
No, the difference is what you do. The difference is what you do and how you do it. So you have a lot of women that come in, and a lot of them that come under me, you find that they're a little bit intimidated because it's majority men, especially in my company as well. So the basic thing that I do first, before I even see if you know how to shift the gear or if you know how to put on an acid suit, I want to know how you feel about this. I want to know why you're here in my truck. I want to know what brought you here, because for the first 2 days, I'm building confidence. Before I can make a driver into the type of driver that I am, I have to get their mind ready and get their emotions ready so that you know that no matter what comes up against you, you can't just give up, and you can't just say, oh, this person was right, oh, this person is better than me. No, it takes time. And in order for it to take time, you have to keep working at it.
The other challenges, and I'm so proud of Angelique, especially with the hazmat. That's a different dimension of hauling. But other challenges are the fact that women don't look at the trucking industry as something that they think they can do. So we have to convince them that they can and that they're capable. A lot of people think that it's a lot more physically demanding than it really is, and it's not. Not like in the past where drivers might have had to load or unload or things like that. It's really, you keep seeing all the ads that say drop and hook, drop and hook. It means that you're being paid to drive the truck, not unload the truck. But the equipment is so much nicer than it was 15, 20 years ago. And it's much easier. There's more technology in the trucks that makes it easier. From pushing a button to lower the dollies to opening the hoods and things like that. So there's lots of things that make the job less physically demanding for everyone. And carriers really do want to get their drivers home more, so they really try hard to keep the runs regional or even local. So the time away from home isn't as much as it was in the past.
Great.
That's correct. She's absolutely right about that difference that they feel that is more demanding, which is why it's very important that you put all of your personality into what you're trying to talk to someone about. Because I was a single mom, 6 kids, been divorced twice. So when someone comes to me and they tell me, I don't know how you do it because I have 2 kids, and I'm like, wow, just 2? Add 4, and then we can have a conversation. So after the conversation finished, there's no more excuses. There's no more excuses. There's none.
That's amazing. Yeah, really good stuff. And Angelique, I like what you said about, preparing their mind for the industry. And what's something, that you wish more women knew about trucking to prepare them for a career as a driver?
I think that my biggest wish for women to learn about the industry is it's not that hard to overcome, because half the things that you think are obstacles, they're really not. They're really not. So if I could just get as many women as I can to say, hey, what is the problem? And I ask that question over and over again. Oh, I thought about being a CDL driver, so what's stopping you? And then we have to have a conversation because you brought it up. So now it's like, what's stopping you? And everything that they say, it's like, it's never ending. Well, I don't have the time to go to school, or you can go to school part-time. And it's like, well, I can't drive a truck. Yes, you can. Why not? I'm driving one. I've been driving one for 20 years. Well, I have kids. Okay, I have kids too. So it's not that hard to overcome the obstacles, and it's not that hard to be in a predominantly male-based industry as it is as of currently, as hard as they think it is. Because if you present yourself as a driver first, you will never go wrong.
And she's right. And when she talked about training, we actually have a scholarship foundation. It's a separate organization. The Women in Trucking Association is a dues-based organization where people are members. But we also have the Women in Trucking Scholarship Foundation, which is a charitable organization. So when people make a donation to it, they can write it off on their taxes. Plus, we give away, last year I think we gave away in December $22,000. And the scholarships are for drivers, for technicians, for safety professionals, and also the 4th scholarships are in what we call leadership. So that's pretty broad, meaning anything. If you work in the trucking industry and you want to get a higher level position, we offer scholarships in all those areas. So we really do want to help. And we also partnered with Expediter Services to help 150 women either buy their first truck or add to their fleet. So we're really trying to help them become owner-operators or small fleet owners as well. So we have lots of resources at Women in Trucking that will help people become drivers and then owner-operators if that's what they're looking for.
And can you tell us a little more about the Women in Trucking mentorship opportunities?
Well, like Angelique mentioned our Facebook page. So on the Facebook page, that's pretty much open to almost anyone. The admins are actually professional drivers who they'll keep off recruiters and they keep off predators and things like that. So because they want it to be a sharing site, they want people to be able to ask questions. But we also have a new, what we call the Engage platform on the Women in Trucking website, where you can connect with other professionals in your field and ask, share best practices and things like that. And then finally, we do have a mentoring. It's a web-based mentoring matchup system. So we have lots of ways. And the other way is we have a lot of networking opportunities, like our Salute to Women Behind the Wheel, both in the U.S. and Canada, where we bring in female professional drivers and have a big celebration and give them a red shirt and a goodie bag, and then just honor them. And at this year's Salute, I was really excited. I got to give away a truck that was donated by Aero Truck Sales. So we, a 2014 Volvo VNL, and we gave that to a female professional driver. And again, she, a mother of 5, and African American, ex-military, 3-time cancer survivor. And so we were really honored to help her get a step up in the world and become an owner operator. So lots of resources for women in trucking, lots of things that we do to encourage and support people to enter this industry.
Well, it's fantastic, all the work that you do and all the effort that's put into it. It's been great talking to you both. We've been speaking with Ellen Voie, President and CEO of Women in Trucking, and Angelique Jones, a commercial driver and part of the image team for Women in Trucking as well. Thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
Well, thank you for helping us share the word.
All right, a special thanks again to Ellen Voie and Angelique Jones for taking the time to talk to us. It was a great conversation, and I hope that can start some more conversations in your own trucking companies or just, your circle of friends in general, hoping to inspire more women to take to trucking. But one of the things that they mentioned, was beating these stereotypes that women can't do the job or that they're not inclined to succeed at trucking. And, that's just simply not true. They did mention, that some of the equipment isn't always tailored to smaller frames, whether you're a man or a woman. It can be difficult to sometimes deal with older equipment that doesn't have as much automation or convenient systems, but that is changing. That's something that the industry is working toward, both to make trucks safer and more efficient. So it's likely that at least we'll see a trend in the manufacturing of trucks to make them more efficient, more safe, to make them easier to use in general. But in terms of stereotypes, I think one of the things that Angelique was really talking about was the fact that if you want to do this and you're committed to the profession, just go ahead and make it happen for yourself. You can beat that stereotype just by leading as an example of what a woman in trucking can be. And it's just sort of to not listen to any of the naysayers when it comes to what you want to do with your career, because at the end of the day, it's whatever really makes you happy and fulfilled and can also bring you a solid source of income.
Yeah, and I think that mentorship program that she talks about and how they are always constantly interacting with other women truckers on Facebook is a great thing. It opens the door. It makes them feel comfortable. And I love that Angelique really stressed the importance of taking new women truckers under their wing and kind of cultivating that relationship and making it more common that women should be in the industry and really promoting that, which was awesome to hear.
Yeah, exactly. So, for one, I guess the message there is just, if you want a truck, go for it. Don't take into consideration, people who are telling you that you can't do it, because you absolutely can. So, next we'll talk about a little bit, what do women bring to trucking? And I think one of the main things that you'll hear actually in a lot of different industries is that women bring a different perspective than men when it's a male-dominated field. Men are usually very, and I don't want to stereotype men too much, but a lot of the time they're very upfront with what they're saying or their opinions or the way that they do things, and can sometimes have difficulty listening or engaging in more nuanced dialogue. So, with an industry that's so bent on safety and communication, I think having more women in the industry is definitely a welcomed change. And that's just one of the ways. But I think what women can bring to trucking additionally is just more support for women in the industry as a whole, whether you're a recruiter or you're working in logistics or dispatching or whatever. Having more women truckers to kind of make those connections throughout the industry is also a pretty positive thing.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about what women bring to trucking, we should also talk about how can we bring women to trucking. And that's through promotion and awareness, things like educating and raising awareness of women's issues in the industry, promoting career opportunities for women in the industry. And luckily, women in trucking do a lot of these things and have put forth the effort. Others include improving conditions for women already working within the industry. I know Angelique mentioned about her salary for a while and how just this year she really started seeing the dividends of all the hard work she's put in. And also just serve as a resource for women working in the industry. We need more resources like Women in Trucking. They can't be the only group to promote women in the trucking industry. It needs to be supported by every trucking company out there, and we're starting to see the signs of it, but we definitely want to see more and more of that. It's definitely encouraging to see certain organizations get behind this movement, and of course, Big Rig Banter and AllTruckJobs are behind this movement 100%.
Absolutely, yeah. So still, there are challenges that we have to mention. There's, when we're talking about sort of whether it's gender equality in the workplace in general and things like that, we're in the era of the hashtag #MeToo movement, and, the awareness generated from that in terms of sexual harassment and those sorts of things, which has been, I think, one deterrent for women entering the industry, just if they have to be mentored by a man and they have to, sort of ride with them in their truck alone, and that can be a stressful situation and not always the most conducive to someone's career.
And it's sad because one unfortunate moment, especially when you're just starting out, can kind of turn them off of the entire career to begin with. So that's so important as soon as women start to get into the industry, cultivating that relationship and finding a usually female mentor to kind of take under their wing, because that crucial first couple weeks on the job is going to be huge.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So again, that's sort of hinting at the mentorship opportunities that you can find through Women in Trucking, and we will have a link to that in the show notes that you can go check out, and you'll find all sorts of different resources there. But one of the nice features through the mentorship program is that you can find there's a database of people willing to help and help cultivate your career. So definitely check that out if you are considering a career in trucking. But yeah, I think overall some of the other challenges just involve support and having everyone feel comfortable and able to do their job safely and efficiently at the end of the day. In several of our interviews we've heard, the truck doesn't realize who's driving it, and at the end of the day, that's what really matters, is that you get to A to B efficiently and safely. And one of the other nice things is that trucking is generally an equal pay profession as well, because you get paid by the load and the amount of distance you drive or whatever the configuration is. So that's another attractive thing about this job for women as well, is that you don't have to necessarily jump through these corporate hoops in order to reach a certain pay grade. You just sort of do the labor, and that's kind of the end of it. But
for sure, and it doesn't matter who's delivering that load. It doesn't matter if it's male or female, and that's how every job should be, in my opinion. It shouldn't matter the person doing it as long as it's getting done.
Right, and so part of generating more awareness is getting women's perspectives on trucking. And we recently had the chance to sit down and interview Ali McTrucks, a content writer who's covered the trucking industry for years, to share her perspective on women in trucking. So here's that interview. All right, we're here today with Ali McTrucks, a content writer and journalist for Aeroflow Industrial. Ali, thanks for coming on the show to discuss women in trucking with us for a little bit.
Thanks, guys. I'm excited to be here to throw in my 2 cents.
Absolutely. Excited to have you. So I guess we'll just start off by asking, what made you want to get into covering the trucking industry?
It was actually a total accident. I was the SEO content manager for a cloud-based software company that did a lot of e-filing products online for taxes, and 4 of those products happened to be for truckers so they could file their 2290 and IPTA taxes. But at the time, I was writing for Mary Kay Directors, and then suddenly overnight, I was pulled off of that and put onto the trucking products. So my blogging focus turned from basically how to get your Contour and Fleek to 5 tips to easily file your 2290 and how to easily back that rig up.
Wow, yeah. Quite a difference.
So what do you think, what are some of the common misconceptions about women in trucking? I know you cover the industry and you get to interact with truckers all the time. What are some things that are misconstrued?
Probably that they aren't wanted. They might feel intimidated in sort of a quote-unquote male-dominated industry, and it's only male-dominated due to the numbers, when in reality, truckers don't care about your gender. They don't care who you are as long as you're good at driving. And they're actually needed to close the trucking shortage. So they are one. That's why they're starting to be recruited more and more.
Absolutely. That's something we definitely hear a lot with just having our own job board, AllTruckJobs, is, there's this shortage, and they're always looking for new drivers, whether it be women or millennials in general. So how do you think we can work to attract young females to the industry to really start closing that shortage gap?
Towards going straight to the source, maybe finding tech schools that offer good trucking training programs. I know one, for example, York Tech in Rock Hill, South Carolina. They have a ton of female students for female students and show them, hey, here's how you get into trucking. We'll train you in the school right here that you have available, and kind of give them some more information about how to build up their career. And then online marketing is usually my go-to for things. There could be more ads targeted to females directly, but I feel like there needs to be a new photo shoot or something out there, because every article about women in trucking has the same 5 stock photos. It's just that one girl in a red vest.
Absolutely, yeah. We run into that a lot, too, with just marketing our own kind of stuff. I guess there's just underrepresentation, right?
Right.
And I know you talked about the kind of stereotypes and the misconceptions. Is there any distinct challenges for women in the trucking industry, or have you faced any challenges covering the trucking industry?
I feel like it can be a little difficult to break into. There's not a lot of information on how to get started. It's like people just go through their training program or trucking school and then learn directly from their trainers. I think it might be helpful for more articles that basically cover how to get started. We're out there. And also, trucks are designed for men. They're quite large. For me, I'm 5'1". If I'm in a truck, it's very hard for me to reach everything. And I guess women want to feel safe, and a dark truck stop at night can feel pretty seedy, or the idea of being alone, training with just one other male in your truck can be kind of intimidating. But the trainer does anything he can, say, hey, quit it and get a new one.
Absolutely, yeah. Those are definitely some concerns that we've also heard, just the safety aspects, the equipment aspects. And so in covering the industry for as long as you have now, have you come across anything that would suggest a sort of a pay gap when it comes to gender in the trucking industry?
Not that I've seen. I know that you're paid by load or by mile, regardless of who you are. Shippers aren't looking at who's behind the wheel as long as they're qualified. There might be a pay gap at corporate level, but all of my research would suggest that women who are on the board of directors and are managers and doing these kind of upper management roles are receiving pretty equal pay. It seems like the trucking industry is a little bit more progressive than others when it comes to equal pay.
What do you wish women knew about trucking, or maybe what are some of the resources or events that are out there for women in trucking? Like I said, we've talked to the Women in Trucking organization, and they had a lot of great resources. I didn't know if there's any off the top of your head that you can think of that are out there for women looking to get in the industry or women that are already in the industry.
I was definitely going to say Women in Trucking. They're a great resource. They have tons of articles. You can ask them questions, and actual women in the trucking industry will answer them, and they have conferences all the time. They're set up at NATS and GATS for you to just easily approach and speak with representatives. And then there's also another one called Real Women in Trucking, which is a blog run by an owner-operator. I think her name is Desiree, and she does a lot of stuff for women too. She runs the Queen of the Road competition, where women are encouraged to write in about their experiences in the industry to show other women that you can do it. And they also throw an annual cruise for lady truckers every year.
Oh, very cool.
Also, I have to throw Twitter out there. I know that only 7% of women are drivers in the industry, but I feel like a lot of them are on Twitter, and they're easy to message and ask. They are happy to share information and help you out if you need it.
Well, that's really cool. That's actually something we were hearing from Ellen Voie and Angelique Jones of Women in Trucking. They were saying how, there's a mentorship program out there available if young women want to find other women to learn from and just kind of gain resources that way. So that's really cool. Twitter definitely is a great resource. So how has covering the trucking industry changed maybe your perspective on women in trucking or just trucking in general?
It's opened up the door to a high level of respect and knowledge for me because I didn't know anything about the industry. And it's just really eye-opening to see just the hard work and dedication that goes into the job. Both men and women face the challenges of planning their routes, just the physical work that comes with trucking, being away from their families, long days, 11 hours of driving sometimes. And they just do a lot. There's a lot of dedication and skill that goes into keeping our nation moving. So I have to throw a thank you out there to all the truckers listening.
Well, thank you. And again, we also thank truckers out there. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I just feel that when we look through the windshield into the trucking future, there's going to be sort of less conversation as more women become drivers, because I think men and women will easily work together to focus on major issues facing the industry. I mean, both men and women stood together at ELD rallies to support the side they were on with that. Both men and women showed up to Days Without Truckers to fight against violence within the trucking industry. And women are a huge untapped resource that I think will soon flourish and take the industry by storm.
Absolutely. We couldn't agree more. It's all about working together and, getting loads from A to B, no matter who you are. So good stuff, right? So we've been speaking with Ali McTrucks, a content writer for Airflow Industrial, covering the trucking industry. Ali, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time today.
Thanks. I had a great time.
Okay, and another special thanks to Ali McTrucks for coming and talking to us about her perspectives on women in the industry. There's a lot of great information and just always good to hear new perspectives. So if you'd like, you can follow Ali at Ali McTrucks on Twitter. Again, it's just another facet of getting more women involved, whether it's covering the industry or advocating for different aspects of women in trucking or being drivers themselves. So aspects, there's a lot of different facets to this.
For sure. And now we're going to continue a segment that we started last month, and that is the Industry Spotlight. We're going to talk to someone who's involved in the industry that may not necessarily have anything to do with the main topic. And actually this month, it's a follow-up interview. If many of you remember, in our Truckers Against Trafficking episode, we talked to Beth Jacobs, who shared her experience being trafficked. And many of you were wondering what actually happened to Beth and how she got out of the situation. Our correspondent, Lene Rule, had the chance to sit down with Beth. And again, it's a very sensitive topic, so listener discretion is advised.
My name is Lene Rule, and I'm here today with Beth Jacobs, who is not only a survivor of human trafficking, but has made it her life's work to save traffic victims. Beth works as a field trainer for an organization called Truckers Against Trafficking, which trains drivers throughout the country on how to identify and report signs of trafficking. Beth was featured on an episode of Big Rig Banter a few months ago and shared part of her personal story with us. Today, she's going to finish telling that story and update us on current legislation. Beth, thanks for joining us again.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
For those who are tuning in for the first time, can you give a brief overview of what we're talking about when we use the word trafficking and why TAT's focus on educating truck drivers is so important?
Yes. You know, in our country, our federal definition of human trafficking is you're either under the age of 18 because you don't have consent, or you've been subjected to force, fraud, or coercion. And if you think about that, when you think about pimps and traffickers, do they ever tell the truth? Not really. So that's fraud. So, anyone that has someone coercing them into prostitution actually is being trafficked. I mean, I don't want people to think that I think all prostitution is trafficking, because I don't. But I do think it crosses over a lot. And it crossed over in my experience too. And so that's what we're talking about today, how easy it is for that to happen to somebody, and how I got sucked in, to let people know. I didn't raise my hand and say, pick me, please. I want to be a prostitute. What a great career choice. It didn't happen like that. This can happen to anybody. I was asking for a ride home with somebody that I already thought I knew. So, that kind of made it worse.
Yeah, definitely. And so, why is it, why are truck drivers specifically so important in the education process on this?
Oh man, I think truck drivers are the eyes and the ears of the road. I mean, they can help law enforcement so much. They're probably going to see that before law enforcement sees it. You know what I mean? And it's just part of that, because traffickers have tried to bring young girls, they tried to traffic them at truck stops and other places, and truck drivers can see that. They can see that and they can make that call. When I was trafficked, there wasn't, people kind of saw what was happening to me, but I don't think they knew what to do. And so they didn't know who to call. And I truly believe that if they knew who to call, somebody would have helped me. I just know they would have. And so it wouldn't have happened to me. And I'm sure they could save a lot of other people from this happening too. So that's why it's so important to me, because it's like personal. And yeah.
Now, I know you shared bits and pieces of your personal story the last time you were on the show, and described those, I think you said it was 6 years that you were trafficked, but can you tell us again how you first got picked up and then how you finally escaped?
Okay, so I had moved with my dad. I lived in a small town in northern Minnesota. There was no work here. My dad had to go to the iron range to find work. Well, my parents' marriage didn't withstand that. So when he came back, they separated, and my father moved to the city. Well, they played favorites. My sister was the golden child, and she
Mine
still
too.
is. Okay, well, I was my dad's favorite, but he wasn't there. He wasn't there anymore. So I asked if I could live with him, and they talked about it and said I could, as long as I got my GED and got a job. And so I was trying really hard to do that. To get around, I had to take a bus from Brooklyn Center to downtown Minneapolis, and then it would take me wherever I wanted to go. I don't know why you had to do it that way, but you did. You always had to go downtown Minneapolis. Well, right by the bus stop I had to wait at, there was like this pool hall type bar place. One day there's a guy standing out there holding a pool stick. Come on, baby. Come on in and shoot a game of pool. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, they're not going to let me in. I'm only 16. Oh, they'll let you in. Come on. He's like, I got the table now. And so I went in with them, and they even served me a beer. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, I thought I was so cool. Here's grown-ups treating me like I'm a grown-up. And I wasn't. But at 16, you think you're invincible,
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I would start going in there faithfully. Every time I went downtown, I would stop in there because they let me in. Anyway, I went on a weekend once and I missed the bus, right? And so I called my dad. He came and got me, but he scolded me all the way home. I work all week. I don't want to, drive you around all weekend. You're not being responsible. He was right. And I said, I'm so sorry, Dad. I'll never do it again. I swear. I'll be responsible. I'll call. I'll find out the bus schedule. Please don't send me back, because I didn't want to go back to the little town. And so he said, okay. So the very next day, of course, I went downtown again, and I just had to go in that pool hall. And I was checking my watch, though, because I didn't want to miss the bus. So I went outside, and I missed the bus. The bus changed again. The schedule changed again on Sunday, and I didn't know that. It changed Saturday and Sunday. And I wasn't responsible, and I didn't call the bus company and find that out before that day. And I thought, I can't call my dad. I just swore to God I'd never do it again yesterday. It was yesterday. I can't do that to him. I love my dad. He's the only one in the universe that cares about me. And so one of the guys that I shot pool with before was in the bar. And him and his friend actually invited me to a barbecue at their house. I went to a barbecue at this guy named Miko's house, right? They talked to me, asked me a bunch of questions. It was Miko and his friend Mo. And they brought me home. I asked them if they'd drive me home from the barbecue, and they did. Okay, well, so I saw Mo in there. I wasn't as friendly with Mo as I was with Miko. But I asked him, hey, could you give me a ride home? And he was like, well, I don't know. I have Miko's car. Let me give him a call. So he comes back, and he's like, yep, Miko said you could, but he wants to see you. So what is going to happen is, I'm going to take his car. He's at a party. I'm going to drive to the party. I'll stay there, and then he'll take you home. And I thought, that's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
But I liked Miko. And so I wanted to see him too, and I was like, well, how far away is it? And he said, it's in Chicago. I said, well, where is that? He said, 2 hours. And I didn't know. I had never been out of Minnesota. I was like, okay. I didn't know Chicago was 6 to 8 hours away.
Yeah.
So I'm in the car. He has a couple of McDonald's cups, and he's like, you want a drink? We're going to a party. And so I took a drink. And the next thing I remember is he's waking me up, right? And it's dark out. Now, there's no way it should have been dark. I missed that bus at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it didn't get dark in Minnesota at that time till 9 or 10. And so I got scared right away, and I said, where are we? And he said, baby, do you know what I am? And I said, no. And he said, I'm a pimp. And I just kind of laughed nervously because that's what I do when I'm nervous. I said, oh, that's great, but I'm not that kind of girl. And I tried to open the door and get out, and he grabbed me by the hair, pulled me back, and hit me a couple times. He said, no, bitch, I didn't ask you. This is what it is. You're going to get in this truck and sleep with this man, and he's going to give me the money, and we're going to go to Chicago. And I was terrified. He gives me to the truck driver. I cried, asked him to help me, which was very stupid because he wasn't going to help me. He wanted what he wanted. But anyway, when he was done, he gives me back to the trafficker, and he told him he wanted some of that money back because I cried too much. And so he beat me outside. I mean, it was dark out, but there were other people there, and I know people saw, but I think they didn't know what to do.
Right.
That's why I do what I do, because I want to tell them what to do. It's better to make that call and be wrong than not make that call at all. And I just believe if people had that number and were equipped, somebody would have helped me. Maybe all of them would have, you never know. But at that time, nobody helped me. And so I ended up, when he was done beating me, he told me that if I ever lost any more money for him, he was going to kill me and my daddy. And I got really scared because he knew where my dad lived,
Yeah.
And like I said before, my dad was the only person in the universe I felt like loved me. I didn't think anyone else loved me. And so I didn't want him to get hurt over something I did. And so he puts me in the car and drives me to Chicago and brings me to this hotel, puts me in this room, takes all my clothes, my purse, everything. That's why I say my situation was like trafficking, because I think about girls who are trafficked in Burma, for example. And what's the difference between my case and their case? They make them, I had to have a new name. I didn't know anybody. They took everything that was familiar away from me. The only difference is I was in America.
Right.
That's the only difference. And so my case of human trafficking definitely crossed over with this prostitution thing. But my society at that time told me it was my fault that I picked that. And really all I picked was a ride home. I wanted to get home so I wouldn't get in trouble. And here I was in Chicago. So it was a horrible experience. I was kept in a room for quite some time. He would use drugs as punishment to try to get me to comply. There was a girl who would come in and put makeup on my face, to make me look better. And she's the one that told me what to do. She's like, no, act like you like it. If you act like you like it, you can leave. They'll let you go outside. And then she said, you can choose someone else. And she taught me what that meant, that I had to get my choosing fee and give it to a different pimp to see if he would accept me. And if he would accept me, I would get away from my vicious pimp,
Right.
And so, because we don't have much time, I was in that life for 6 years. I had no self-esteem. I felt like nobody wanted me. I had nowhere to go. There were no choices. I had no choices. And it seemed like everybody was out to exploit me, even the police. The police wanted me to do their police party. It was very humiliating. Because here's these people who are supposed to be my friends, and look what they're doing to me. And so the police didn't help me. There was a lady that would come down on the track and pray for us. She said if we didn't change our ways, we'd go to hell. And then one day I asked her to take me with her. I said, okay, I'm ready. I'll go. And she was like, what? I said, I'll go with you. And she said, I can't take you with me. And I said, well, what do you mean? You come down here, pray for us. Like, you can't help me? And she said, no. That made me feel like the churches didn't care. I just felt like I had nobody and I had no options. And so I just existed, I didn't think about tomorrow. I just lived through the day, over and over. And I did that for 6 years. I did small things to try to make my life better. I found what I call a popcorn pimp or a tennis shoe pimp. I found a pimp that wasn't such a pimp because I would have been killed. That first pimp would have killed me. I mean, he still beat me, don't get me wrong, but not as much as the first one. So I was able to choose that pimp, and I think that's how I survived the rest of those years. And it's hard to get out because you have no options. I mean, it was scary to get out. Where was I going to go? What was I going to do? Who would help me? I looked around. Police won't help me. The churches won't help me. Who's going to help me? So anyway, all of a sudden, there's this serial killer that's going around killing prostituted women in Chicago. And so the police told me, watch out for this white van. Don't get in because the police are supposed to be my friends, right?
Right.
And so I went home, and told the pimp that. And he already knew because the pimp that I had was from a family. The mother was a reverend and all 3 boys were pimps. And I'm not sure what her daughter did, but yeah. His brother, the middle child, was a very successful pimp. And then there was one that was in the penitentiary. I never actually met him. The whole 6 years he was in there. But anyway, he had a woman that was still out there working. And this serial killer guy got her. He didn't kill her. She lived barely. And so she was never the same, and the other 2 pimps talked about it and they were like, no, we got to get our women out of here. And so they sent me and the other bottom to Minnesota. Well, the other pimp was all set up, he was very successful. So when we get there, I'm supposed to drop her off right away at a massage parlor. And then I was supposed to pick her up 4 hours later. So I dropped her off and went back to get her, and she wasn't out there waiting. So I'm just a nosy person in general. I had never seen a massage parlor in a strip mall before, and this one was in a strip mall. And so I wanted to see what kind of store was next to a massage parlor. So I flip on the lights, and I couldn't quite see in the window, so I got out of the car like an idiot, looked in the window, and who pulls up? The police. I'm like, oh, man. So they pull up, asked me what I'm doing there, ran my name, and then they told me I had a warrant for $50. I didn't even remember what it was for. The only thing I did when I was young was drinking in the park. So that's probably what it was for. And so they take me to jail. I took the car keys. The girl came down to the jail to get the car keys, and I said, well, did she pay my bond? And they were like, no. And I said, well, I'm not giving her the keys then. I didn't want to give up the keys. So I said, no. I just got mad because I knew he told her not to get me out. It was $50 lousy. As much money as I made for that man, and he wasn't going to get me out for $50. I hated jail. Jail was horrible, and he knew that. It was horrible for me. And $50, that wasn't nothing. So I was very, I was angry. And that's how I got out. It takes a lot of courage, and I don't know, I think I got that extra courage because I was angry about that. So when she left the jail, I called a regular I had in Chicago, and he wired the money, the $50 to a bondsman, and they walked over to the jail and got me out. And I went to where we were staying, her sister's house actually, and I told the girl I needed my stuff because I was going to go out and make my bond money back up. So she gave me some of my stuff, and as soon as she shut that door, I just started to cry because I knew I wasn't going back, and I felt like I made it. I didn't have any clue what I was going to do, but I made it. I was still alive. So anyway, I had decided that night, I remembered going to a hotel. I was trafficked to a dental convention in Minnesota. And I remember going to a hotel where they accepted my sister's paper. That's all I had. I didn't have any ID. And so I went there and they let me stay. And so there I was in this hotel. And this is an important part, I think. For 4 months of my life, I would get up in the morning, go out to the track from 9 o'clock in the morning to 11. I would prostitute myself only long enough to get food for the day and to pay my hotel fare for the day. And then I would go sit in that room because I didn't know who would help me. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I felt like it was my fault. I ruined my life. And they told me, the trafficker told me I was ruined. Nobody would want me because, at that barbecue, they asked me questions. They asked me about religion and, all kinds of stuff. And in my family, the church that I went to, if you slept with someone out of marriage, you were ruined. Nobody would ever want you. You were done. And so that's how I felt. And so I sat there and just wasted my life. And finally, I got scared they were going to call the police on me, the hotel. I mean, I never had a pimp there. I didn't bring people there. I was the only one that was ever there. But one of the maids said she knew what I was doing. She got fired, and another maid told me she got fired because she wanted to call the police on me. And I thought, what? So I got scared, and I had to leave there because I didn't want to go to jail. So I finally, I ran into a trick who had property, which was the dumbest thing I've ever done, but I had to rent his property. So I ended up paying him rent and sleeping with him. But at least I was away from the hotel. And then when I went into that property, there was a woman who lived upstairs. And she kind of friended me a little bit. And she told me, what an unemployment office was. She told me where I could go get ID. She helped me.
Right.
Because and she was just a neighbor.
And how old were you at this point then?
Probably 21.
Okay.
It took me a year once I got to Minnesota to be able to, before I stopped altogether, because I didn't have any choice. I had no way to make money. That was the only way I knew to make money, and I had to survive. So, and I know you wanted me to say that quickly.
No, that's good because it really, just to picture you from 16 to age 21, and I'm sitting here thinking about what I was doing during that time in my life, and just the way you mature and change and the way you learn things. So to imagine going through all of that at that time period is just, it's amazing to see where you are now, because being told that you're worthless and trying to overcome that had to have been a really challenging thing for you to do.
Yes, and it's like I didn't think about next week ever because I couldn't do that. It's like what was happening to me was terrible, and I would disassociate all the time. I didn't think about what was happening to me. When I was with a trick, I would think about something else. So for years I didn't grow, and I didn't, I wasn't nurtured. I just existed. People don't understand that. Another part they don't understand is the prostitution part itself became irrelevant. It's like, that's what I had to do to have somebody love me. And I just wanted someone to love me. And that, it was the only way somebody would love me. And I know it wasn't probably true, but it was better than not hearing it at all,
Yeah, absolutely. Were you ever, did you ever contact your family at all during that time? Or, did they know what happened to you, or did you just disappear?
Well, I tried. Their perspective, I'm sure, is I just disappeared. But, the trafficker always told me that my family didn't want me. And then there was a time I tried to get away and tried to go back home, and my mom was supposed to pick me up. Well, instead of my mom being there, the trafficker was there, and the trafficker then told me my mom sold me, and she didn't like me, so I believed him at that time.
Yeah.
And so we had this huge rift between us. I didn't want to deal with that. And then my dad, he was like divorcing my mother. I felt like I should have my mom's back. He was living with this woman that he cheated on my mom with. It was just messy. And I didn't want to be in that.
Right. Now, have you reconnected? I mean, I'm assuming you reconnected with your family at some point now.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good.
Yep. I have.
And
both of them. My father died, and my mom, she's still here. And actually, I live in that little small town again because this is where she is, and I want to have a relationship with her before it's too late.
So after, you got out and everything, how did you end up getting involved with TAT and, getting a degree and ending up where you are now?
Okay, well, I found, after I got out, I found a program. It was a few years later. I mean, I had no one to help me. That neighbor kind of helped me. So a few years later, she wasn't really my wife-in-law because we were with brothers. Anyway, so I had a relationship with her. Years later, she's the one that came to me and said, I found this group. It's kind of cool. You can go to this group, sit down, talk, other people just like us, and it's confidential. So anyway, she convinced me to go, and I went, and I liked it. And she was right. It was like all women who had been through what I've been through. And they called it educational/support, where we would talk about a topic, and then we would talk about how it applied to our lives. And I just thought that was great. And so, I stayed there. I went there for a year. And so I just got into it, and they helped me get into college. I decided to study social work because I wanted to give back to people like me. And I was able to graduate with honors. I did pretty good.
Awesome.
And yeah. And then I just worked. I mean, I got hired out of college with a supervisory position. So I got lucky. I worked at a place called Breaking Free in St. Paul, Minnesota. Okay. And I worked on and off at that place for over 10 years. I did groups for women, and I just loved it. I loved what I was doing. I would go around and tell my story, what happened to me, and let people know this can happen to anybody. I even was able to buy a house. I would have never had the tools to buy a house without them. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I didn't know how to fix things. I didn't know about your finances, none of that. And they helped with that. So that was wonderful. It made me feel like a real life person, instead of the person that I was out there. Yeah. I felt like I made it to the other side. I don't believe that I'm a prostitute. I'm not. This is not who I am. This is something that was done to me. It's a verb. Yeah. I was prostituted.
Yeah.
I'm not a prostitute. And so I try to be really careful and never call anybody that. So just thought I'd clarify that since I did it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to put out there, because we have a lot of truck drivers listening? So is there anything you'd like to say to them before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think you guys are awesome. I think you're amazing, and you're the heroes, and I'm very grateful that you're listening, actually. I just want people to know this can happen to anyone. I didn't want this for myself. I wanted a ride home. I wanted to ride home to stay out of trouble, and then look what happened. And that's what it was from. It was from a ride. How many people have asked for a ride home and got it and was safe? A lot, but it does happen. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's how it happened to me. And it can happen to anyone. So please warn your loved ones, warn your family, tell them this is real. We need to stop people from buying people. We can't buy people.
Yes.
People should not be for sale.
All right, so another huge thank you to Beth Jacobs for taking the time to recount her story again with us. It's just amazing work that Truckers Against Trafficking do, and if you want to get involved with their organization, definitely check them out. We'll have a link to their site in the show notes as well. But that concludes our industry spotlight for this episode, and if you have any suggestions or would like to be our subject for the Industry Spotlight in coming episodes, definitely give us a shout out on Twitter or Facebook, or just message us directly, and we'd be happy to set something up with you. And so to kind of conclude this episode, we have some new announcements that we'd just like to make known to all of our listeners here. Lene, who you heard in that last interview, and myself will be at GATS this year in Texas. So we've got a lot of great stuff coming for you guys for that. We're going to be down there running some contests. We'll have a lounge situation. You can come by and chill. Lots of freebies. So definitely come visit us when we're down there. And, you may have your own little spotlight in a coming episode as well. We're going to be doing on-the-spot interviews and things like that. So definitely give us a visit. And who knows, you could be part of Big Rig Banter yourself. And that would just be fun, wouldn't it? But again, if you guys enjoyed this episode and previous episodes, please feel free to subscribe to our iTunes and our YouTube channel to stay up to date on all of the new content that we're going to be posting and all of the GATS updates we'll be giving you guys.
And again, if there's truckers out there still looking for a job, or trucking companies looking to fill their rigs, make sure to check out AllTruckJobs.com. You can schedule a demo if you're a company, and we'd love to have you on our team. We provide some great services as well as some great content for truckers looking for careers.
Absolutely. So we usually like to finish things off with a fun topic section just to keep it light and fun. So, summer's coming up, it's getting warmer out, and it got us thinking, what would be the best vacation spots for truckers? What kind of destinations can break up the monotony of driving across the country so often, and what places haven't you seen that might be interesting to visit? So Troy, what do you think your ideal destination would be if you were a trucker looking to get away for a couple weeks?
Well, I think the obvious ones are the Floridas and the Californias, those beachside cities, but I'm going to go a little different. I'm going to choose Bangor, Maine. And that is a place in Maine that's a quiet little town. And I think the last thing as a trucker you want to see are cars and people on the road. And luckily, Bangor, Maine's a small enough town that you can kind of find yourself off a little dirt road, find yourself a cabin out there, and just enjoy some peace and quiet without the sounds of the highway. And I think that's what a lot of truckers are looking for. Yeah, the beach is great, especially in the summer, but I think just having some peace and quiet is also very cool. And Bangor is a big enough city that there's definitely a lot to do, but there's not going to be so many people that you're constantly surrounded by crowds. So if I was a trucker, I'd want a place that's a little quieter, something where I can just go and relax, enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the wilderness, and not have to see the macadam and the blacktop all the time. But Connor, where would you choose?
Well, it depends, I guess, where I lived originally as a trucker, and if I was driving through different types of locations where I might want to check out. But you know what? I think I'm just going to give a plug to our hometown here, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, because there's plenty to do here where we are, and you can get away into the nature if you need to. You can come visit Amish country and kind of get low-tech in terms of trucking and maybe some of the bigger machinery around. I mean, we do have tractors and combines moving about pretty frequently here, but yeah, you can find just about anything. If you're looking for kind of a city feel, Lancaster City's great. It's not too big like a New York or anything, but we've got some great restaurants, great bars, and things like that. And yeah, great hiking trails if you just want to get out into nature again. And it's only about, 2 hours drive from Maryland Beach if you need to get some sun and sand into your life. So yeah, come on by, give us a visit here, and then again, I would definitely just plug here because it's one of the only places I can vouch for personally. But, I mean, otherwise, try to pick somewhere maybe a little cooler. And I think Maine is a good idea because it's probably a little chillier up there in terms of latitude. But if you guys have any destinations that you're currently planning, any vacations you're going to go on this summer, let us know and why it's your favorite as a trucker.
Awesome, Connor. And now it's time for our final topic. I think it's time to spread the love for some of our fellow trucking podcasters. So why don't we name some of our few, Connor, and give some listeners some other material to listen to after they finish our episode, of course.
Of course. So my first pick for one of our favorite podcasts is Ask the Trucker Live with Alan Smith. It's a great podcast if you're getting into the industry or you've been in it a long time. He covers everything from driver health, careers, regulations, and important issues, much like we do on the show, but he has experience in the industry himself driving, so it's a really valuable perspective to listen to. He's got lots of episodes, and it's cool that it's live as well, which is something we can't necessarily do here on Big Rig Banter yet, but you know, when he has people call in or like other interviews in that capacity, it's pretty cool. So that's my first pick. Troy, what do you got?
Yeah, my pick is definitely Trucker Dump. If that name sounds familiar or the voice on the podcast sounds familiar, that's because it's Todd McCann, who's been a guest on our show multiple times. Todd's a great guy, and he runs a great podcast. He does topics like stupid rules that truckers tolerate and coping with rookie truckers, and it's just a great podcast to listen to, especially for those in the industry. Todd, we always enjoy you on the show, and we hope you guys check out Trucker Dump for sure. But Connor, give us another one.
Definitely. So my second pick is Talk CDL, Trucking Podcast. This is a podcast that's been going on for quite some time as well. They've got lots of people following them on Facebook, and I always like listening to this one just because the hosts have a good rapport with one another. It sounds very natural, and it's always kind of fun to listen to how they banter back and forth. And they cover a lot of the same issues, you know, regulations and just different safety aspects of the job and career advice and things like that. So definitely Talk CDL is another one that we definitely enjoy listening to. So Troy, what's your fourth pick here?
Yeah, and our final one we're going to shed some light on is How to Be a Truck Driver 101, and that's hosted by Big Ken, who has many years' experience in the rig, and this is more focused towards beginner truck drivers, but what I like about this is he focuses on a very specific topic for each episode. That includes 1099s versus W-2s as a company truck driver, or things like setting up an ELD as an owner-operator. And I think this is great for those just getting in the industry. You can kind of pick and choose which episodes you want to listen to. And Ken does a really good job at highlighting some of the major issues that truckers will face just getting into the industry.
So there you have it. Those are our 4 picks for some of our favorite trucking podcasts. If you guys have other podcasts that you think we should check out as well, comment them either on Facebook or Twitter. Send us a message, whatever you want to do. But we'd love to hear from you guys. And so that's about all we've got for this episode. Thanks for listening. And like I said, definitely come check us out at GATS when we're there. It's going to be a fun time for everybody. We have a lot of great giveaways, contests, that sort of thing. So give us a visit. And again, if you like this podcast, please leave us a good review. It really helps to grow the following and just sort of get Big Rig Banter out to more people. Subscribe, and all the links and things we mentioned today will be in the show notes. You can check those out. And so next, our episode is going to be on guns and trucking, everything you kind of need to know about carrying guns from one state to the next as a trucker, whether or not that's even possible, and the legal aspects as well as some of the challenges. So episode 17 is going to be all about guns and trucking. But for now, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks for listening. I'm your co-host, Connor Smith.
And I'm your co-host, Troy Diffenderfer.
And this has been Big Rig Banter.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Big Rig Banter. For your next job, check out AllTruckJobs.com, the premier online source for finding the best driver jobs in the country. Browse hundreds of positions by freight or driver type to get back on the road with confidence. Click subscribe to keep the conversations coming. Until next time on Big Rig Banter.